Paul. That is brilliant. Hey guys, let me introduce you to Paul. He's our new TFL expert driver, and coming up right now on the Fast Lane car, what are we gonna do, Paul?
Well, let's go drift a Hellcat around. Why don't we do that?
When I was a TV reporter, right, I did this crazy ass story where there was a retired Wisconsin police officer, and he had a private zoo, right? So I go to his house to do the story on this private zoo, and unbeknownst to me, he had a baby Bengal tiger that lived in his house. So back then we had to use a lot of lights, right, because the cameras didn't have really good sensors.
Right.
So I turn on the lights, and the cat just freaks out, right? And the guy's like, "Rrr," and this was this huge cop. He's probably 400 pounds, right? The cat's like jumping around, and he's like, "Hey, you better turn those lights off." And I'm like, what the hell am I doing in the house with a Bengal tiger on a leash? So that's what it was like driving.
Manual.
Yeah, let's go around for a lap. All right, let's show them just the first basic and getting the tail out.
Okay, let's do that. First thing someone wants to do is learn how to basically kind of power out of the turn. So power slide the car. So you enter into the turn without the car sliding, but it's near its limit, okay? And then you add what ends up being an excessive amount of power on the exit of the corner. If I were trying to set a fast lap, I would try and moderate the wheel spin ever so slightly so the car doesn't step out too much. But of course, the idea of drifting is to have the car out. So you're going to use, kind of way too much power, but not so much that you spin, and basically power slide the car out of the corner. So that's the first and simplest thing, and what you see most people doing when they're drifting a car.
Like that tiger, I told you.
It is. It's just like, it has a strange, you can feel like the Ackerman in the steering. So when you get a lot of steering angle, it really parks the front of the car.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can feel that.
I can feel it.
It's a weird thing. And so once you put a lot of lock in, it really tries hard to spin because the front's kind of parking itself because of steering geometry.
Right, because I always thought it was you do the Scandinavian flick, right? You get
That's a technique. There's so many techniques, and of course you've got the Scandinavian words for it, and you've got the Japanese words for it, and then the American words for the same thing, because all these different cultures sort of develop drifting themselves, So it's really kind of an interesting thing how that all worked simultaneously, really, on different continents. More advanced thing to do is enter the corner sideways, right?
Yeah.
And then transition from entering sideways on brake or trailing throttle, transitioning that then to power in one continuous drift. Let's see what we got here. See, here's a little bit of left foot brake, so that makes life a lot easier.
That was good.
Yeah. It's so snappy, this thing.
So that is very difficult. I mean, you have to coordinate both your left foot braking and your right foot throttle. You have to control the car as it's going around on a very tight track. It's really tricky.
Yeah, I mean, you're balancing a lot of different things, from grip, and the grip even changes from moment to moment as the tires start getting hotter.
Yep.
So the grip starts going away, which makes life easier, but that means you need less of everything. So you're balancing that with the corner radius, where you want to place the car, all those things kind of simultaneously. So it's a little bit of juggling going on there. Next thing from that is to be able to continuously drift through transitions. And that's really hard. So what we would call in the industry, we're linking it. You're going to link the turns together, and that means that the drift never stops. So you go right from a right to a left to a left to a right, or however that may be. And sometimes that also involves what they call mange, which is, kind of taking the car through the straightaway a little bit and putting an extra turn in the middle of the straight just to continue the drift as you go through.
So basically those rear wheels are continually spinning?
The whole time. So the rear wheel is always mobile. It's never hooked up. So in the first example, we're going in the rear is hooked up. We're only powering out of the corner and making the car drift out of the turn.
Yep.
Then we're going to go in using maybe a Scandinavian flick, using some load transfer. A lot of cars you can do it just on a clever brake release. The rear end will come out for you.
Yep.
And then go use that drift and then kind of line up the exit, then go to power and now continue it through. So now you've slid the whole corner, you've drifted the whole corner.
All right, here we go.
Let's do a little bit further down.
Dude, that was cool!
There you go. And the other thing that, of course, in drifting, when you see it on like Formula D or something, those cars are incredibly modified. So they have ridiculous power, so they can spin the tires at any moment at any speed. So that's number one. Number two, they have a hydraulic handbrake.
Yeah, I saw that, yeah.
So those hydraulic handbrakes, so it's a parking brake, but it's a separate caliper that's put on the back, and it's hydraulic, and usually it's placed up here by the shifter or by the steering wheel, so it's really easy to get to. And of course, the cars are all manual transmissions, so they clutch the car at that moment. So it's a clutch and a pull.
Yep. So
clutch in, pull the brake, and then bam, you're right back on power just before the clutch comes out, and now you light the thing and you go. So it's actually a lot grippier than I thought, and I'm dealing with, it keeps trying to downshift on me.
Right.
So I don't know if you can feel that there, but it's kind of between first and second on that corner.
Yeah.
So it's not really happy. And the thing is the cars you think would be really cool to drift would be like, oh, let's drift a Viper, let's drift a Vet, let's drift. Sports cars have hardly any steering lock, and if you ever tried to make a U-turn on a street with one, you realize that you're like, wow, this thing, So drifting, they do that super modified steering rack, and they also do a quickener, so they basically quicken the ratio of the rack so they can steer very quickly and extreme angles. And you can take a drift car into a corner backwards and still save it. And it's kind of crazy. They'll go past 90.
And they'll bring it back.
On an entry, a 100-mile-an-hour entry to a corner, and they'll be past 90, and they have so much steering angle that they can bring the car back at that point. So it's pretty awesome stuff.
All right, Paul, so you've drifted a lot of cars. You've spent a lot of your life driving cars. How is the Hellcat as a drift car?
Well, it certainly has all the horsepower a drift car needs.
I think that's a nice way of saying it's a tiger on a leash. As always, this is Roman and
Paul Gerard
saying thanks for watching, and check out tflcar.com for more news, views, and of course, real-world drifting reviews. See you guys next time. Ciao. Wow, check this out, guys. After only about 15 minutes of drifting, we burned through a $500 set of rear tires. And that's really where we need your help. If you guys like these videos, I'd be very grateful. And I think you'd love this TFL Ike Gauntlet t-shirt. It helps pay for not only drifting, but also running trucks up the Ike Gauntlet. And all you have to do is click above to get one and help support TFL so that we can get new tires for the Hellcat. Thanks for your support. You know, there are a bunch of different dynos out there, right?
Sure.
And they all measure differently.
Yes, they do.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's no one number.
No, never. No.
So which one are we using, and is this a heartbreaker?
This is somewhat of a heartbreaker. I believe it's an eddy current. Most modern eddy current dynos breed a little lower than the old inertial dynos. This is from Australia. It's a Dyno Dynamics, and it's about 10 years old, but these are pretty darn consistent. I'm okay with that.
All right, so we're gonna get a couple things, right? We're gonna get the most important thing, which is how much horsepower it's producing at the wheels.
Yeah.
All right, and what's your guess? Come on, give me a kind of a 707.
It's 707. I'm gonna say 620 at the wheels because we're at altitude. I use a fairly low correction factor. With boosted cars at this altitude, we're at 5,000 feet above sea level right now. So we should lose, according to the ideal gas law, we should lose around 30% of power. But because we have a supercharger working for us,